Hello everyone, this is Mr. Zoeller, and I'm going to be presenting a screencast today on Chapter 12 out of our book on Foreign Affairs in the Young Nation, and we're going to be looking at what did our first 5 presidents have to do with our relations that we had with other countries early on. So here's an overview of what I'm going to be going over in the video. First, we'll be looking at what the essential question is for this chapter. And then we're going to look at our first president, George Washington, and his policy that he felt that the United States needed to have in our relations with other countries. Next, we'll look at our second president, John Adams, and his dilemma that he had with trying to protect American sailors in our shipping. Next, we'll look at President Thomas Jefferson and the issue that we had with pirates, not Pirates of the Caribbean, but other pirates that were attacking American ships. Fourth, we're going to be looking at President James Madison as he's trying to continue to protect our shipping and our settlers as they start moving out west and some problems that come up with him. And then finally, we'll look at our fifth president, James Monroe, and what should we do about supporting Central and South America as we'll have revolutions beginning there. So the essential question for this chapter we're looking at is, to what extent should the United States have become involved in world affairs in the early 1800s? And this is still a huge question facing the United States today with how involved should we get in helping other countries? Should we be going to war? Should we be giving them aid? We're focusing, though, on the first about 50 years of the United States under, or not the first 50 years, but our first 5 presidents early on. So for George Washington's foreign policy, as first president of the United States, he believed that our country was weak. We're a brand new country. We're getting on our feet. We don't have a strong economy. We don't have a strong military or a navy. So he believed that the United States should stay neutral, which means that we're not going to choose to be friends with one country over another. And what developed during Washington's presidency is a war is raging on in Europe. And two of the main enemies that are fighting each other are Great Britain and France. And so France, who was our ally against the British, is demanding that the United States come in and help them, just like they helped us against the British, who we fought against for independence. And so Washington said that we need to avoid alliances. Oh, hi, Amelia. How are you? Are you going to come and help? Okay. All right. And so Washington's policy of avoiding alliances is what we call isolationism, when you're trying to isolate yourself, being neutral, and you're not going to support one side over the other. It's pretty exciting, yeah. Next we have President John Adams, our second president of the United States. And he's trying to follow in the footsteps of Washington. He's trying to stay neutral as well. And but he's also trying to fix some problems that are happening with the British and the French. And so one thing he wanted to do was to get the British out of America. So the British still had forts that they had in the western Ohio River Valley area. There's still British troops there. And so John Adams sends the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Jay, to Great Britain, to London, and we end up getting what's called the Jay Treaty. And in that treaty, the British promised to remove their soldiers that are still in the United States of America, that are still in these forts. And that means that the United States can now move in there and not worry about any incursions by the British. France, who was our ally during the Revolutionary War, however, is upset because they see this as us allying and working with the British, their enemy. So the French, in response to that, began attacking American vessels as we're shipping across the Atlantic Ocean. And so John Adams sends some diplomats to France to try to negotiate a truce that they would leave our shipping alone. And so we have an event that comes out that's called the XYZ Affair, and a very interesting event, and you can see the picture there on your screen right here, is that the 3 diplomats from the United States meet some French agents nicknamed X, Y, and Z, and they demand that the United States pay tribute money to the French government in order for us to actually talk to them about peace. And so there's outrage back in the country when they hear about this, and so Americans demand that we don't pay any tribute, any money to the French. Instead, let's spend all that money on developing our Navy and increasing our Army. So in the end, however, things end up looking pretty well for John Adams. There's a demand for going to war against France, and he tries to keep us out of it, and he ends up making a deal with, at that time, the ruler of France, Napoleon Bonaparte. So he's part of the French Revolution. And so Napoleon said he'd make peace with the United States. He ordered his navy to stop seizing our ships. And he also said that the alliance between our two countries is null and void, so we don't have to worry about it anymore. So the third president that we had, Thomas Jefferson, he had issues that he had to deal with as well. The main one was that we had pirates attacking our shipping in the Mediterranean Sea. And so the Mediterranean Sea is the sea between Europe and northern Africa. And so our ships would be coming in and trading with some of the European countries, and pirates would attack and steal our cargo from our ships. And so since Washington and Adams before him had paid money to these pirates to leave our ships alone, and the pirates decided, hey, it's working, let's raise it. And Jefferson decided that no, he's not going to pay any more money. And in response, the pirates began attacking our ships. So in response to that, Thomas Jefferson ends up losing some ships to these pirates. And the French and the British still are attacking our shipping because we are trading with their enemy, and they don't want us to do that. And we have what's called the Embargo Act that's passed. And so Thomas Jefferson believed that if the United States stopped trading altogether with France and Britain, then they would demand that they would stop attacking our ships because they want to get trade with us. They want to have what we're giving to them. And in the end, however, the Embargo Act isn't going to hurt France and Britain. It's actually going to hurt Americans because now American ships are staying in port. None of the sailors have a job anymore, and it's causing a disaster to the economy in America. And it wasn't a very popular event. Now, probably out of all our first 5 presidents, the one president who had the biggest event that happened is going to be President James Madison. And so even in his presidency, we still have the French and the British attacking each other. They're still attacking American ships because we're trading with their enemy. And so he has to face that dilemma just like the presidents before him. So there were some members of Congress that are called war hawks, and they were eager to go to war against Great Britain in 1812. So as Americans are moving further out to the western frontier, they're beginning to see that Native Americans have all these new weapons that they're using to fight us, and many Americans believe that the British are supplying these guns to the Native Americans to attack our settlers. And so they're demanding, hey, you know what? Great Britain is in war in France and Europe right now. If we send our entire military, invade Canada, we can drive the British out because they're focused in Europe, and it'll be a piece of cake. It'll just be a walk-in, they'll take it, and everything will work well. Well, so James Madison decides, okay, he asked Congress to declare war, and they did. So in 1812, we have the start of what's called the War of 1812, and that's going to last for a couple of years into 1815. So overall, this is what we call the Second War for Independence. And at the result of the end of the war, a few things happened. So Native Americans that were stopping settlers from going west and attacking them, a lot of that resistance is going away because of the numbers that they lost and the leaders that they lost in the war. Americans are going to feel pretty good about themselves because we didn't let the British beat us. And we'll find out that in the War of 1812, neither side really won. So the United States didn't win, and the British didn't win. But, oh, hi, sweetheart. But it was kind of a tie in the end. And the Federalist Party this whole time, which was the party of Adams earlier, they were all wanting... Are you checking my temperature? Oh, is it good? Oh, I think I'm good. I love you. Amelia loves to come and check on me. So Federalists who were against this war, saying this is going to be horrible. Some of them even were arguing maybe we should leave the United States and join Great Britain. Once the war was over and Americans feel pretty good about themselves that we were able to stand up to Great Britain again, the Federalists who were against that war are going to lose a lot of power. And our last president we're looking at is President James Monroe. And so after these European wars had been going on, France eventually loses their war in Europe, and Spain has suffered a lot of damage as well. And so the Spanish aren't able to keep their colonies going in Central and South America anymore. And so one by one, we're beginning to have countries declaring independence and wanting to create their own governments. And a lot of those nations, of course, are influenced by the United States because of the Declaration of Independence, because we defeated the British, won our independence. And so that's going to kind of cause a domino effect into Central and South America. And so the question is what's the United States going to do about that? Are we going to try to help the Spanish get their colonies back, or are we going to allow these countries to be free? And so in the end, the United States is going to support these countries, saying they have the right to be independent, just like we went through that same process. And we decide that we'll increase our trade with them. And in the end, President Monroe is going to have a statement, which we call the Monroe Doctrine, that states that Europe has to stay out of the Americas, out of South and Central America. The Americas are for the Americans. Europe is for Europeans. And so the United States is basically threatening Europe that France, Spain, and others do not try to come to South America and colonize. If you do, then you're going to meet with us. And as you'll find out, the British and the United States are also kind of behind this. And so the British want to trade with all these colonies that only traded with the Spanish. And the United States, of course, would love to trade with them as well, because that could help out our economy and our jobs. So that concludes this video. So I hope that you paid attention to it, and I'll see you all later.